This episode of the Construction Record is brought to you by the Greater Toronto Sewer and Water Main Contractors Association. Clean water, our goal, our future.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 72 of the Construction Record podcast. This is Vince Versace, National Managing Editor of the Daily Commercial News and Journal of Commerce, joining you today. This podcast is supported by ConExpo ConAg. Check out North America's largest construction show, which will hit the stage in Las Vegas, March 10th to the 14th next year. With over 2,000 exhibitors, there's a lot to see and do at this show. Save 40% on show admission when you register by January 17th. And those of you who listen to us regularly know that this podcast is a supporting podcast of ConExpo, and both Warren Fry and myself will be on the ground in Las Vegas next year to check out the show and collect as much story and intel that we can over the 4 days there that we can then share with you, our listeners, and our readers in the DCN and JOC. And one session that I'm looking forward to, just got notice of it, it concerns 4 things contractors need to understand about innovation. The speaker at this session is someone that you may be aware of. His name is James Benham. He's a CEO and founder of JB Knowledge, technology solutions company serving construction and insurance. I've seen James before, so have my staff. His talks are always engaging. We look forward to this, just like we look forward to everything at the show. It'll be our first time there, and it'll be quite the collection of expertise I think that we're going to be exposed to. And when we talk about expertise and we look at what James' session is going to be about, as he says, technology is the great equalizer. It's far cheaper, faster, and better than years ago. And using that as kind of a general description of this session, he's going to talk about the 4 things contractors need to know. And the themes, those 4 themes he's going to explore are level the playing field, give the right people the right tools, mitigate risk, and look to the future. James is going to be presenting on March 12th, Thursday, March 12th, from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. at ConExpo. So if you wanted to get more information about his session or about the show, please go to conexpoconag.com to either register or find out more information. And by all means, if you're going to the show and you're one of our regular listeners, please let us know. Warren and I would love to meet with you while we're down there or talk to you beforehand. And maybe we can experience the show together at some point. So with that, wanted to just talk about some of the central stories, kind of key stories we've been working on here at the DCN. It's been an active time here in Ontario in particular. We had the building show that was just recently held, the building show in Toronto. We had our freelancers and staff covering about 14 different sessions at the event, and we've been sharing some of that information and stories. Interestingly, at the building show, Monte McNaughton, Ontario's Minister of Labour, Training and Skills Development, provided a keynote, and he covered 2 different areas. One in particular, like he was responding to the recent Auditor General's report, which contained an operational overview of the Workplace Safety and Insurance Board. Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk provided a critique of worksite inspections and program oversight. And that report was released December 4th for those of you who may have missed it. You can catch up to find out the construction-related stuff in it at dcnonl.com. We've written a couple of stories about it. But in particular, we wrote about Lysyk's devoting one section of her report to value for money for health and safety audits. And she concluded that the ministry has been successful at consistently maintaining the lowest lost time injury rate in comparison to other provinces. But she did identify 13 problem areas that should be addressed. Minister McNaughton was asked to speak to some of those findings, and Don Wall covered them in his story. In particular, she called for clear association reporting as it concerns those involved in health and safety. She said the audit noted that although the ministry provides health and safety associations with about $90 million in funding per year, it does not know how effective the associations have been at helping to prevent occupational injury or disease. She noted IHSA, the Infrastructure Health and Safety Association, in one passage, And then we took it upon ourselves to talk to President and CEO of IHSA, that's Enzo Garritano. And he said his organization has no problem with the recommendations in the report, but he could not say the same for the data presented. And this is a quote directly from Mr. Garritano. The data that we were singled out with, we noticed immediately there's a difference between that and what we report every year. We have notified the Attorney General and the CPO, Chief Prevention Officer, and the Ministry of Labor that there's a discrepancy that needs to be looked into. We have essentially met our transfer payment service level requirements every year and the agreed upon service level requirement. So we aren't sure why the discrepancy exists, but we have asked them to look into it. Interesting to get kind of a bit of a rebuttal from IHSA on that. If you want to learn more about the Auditor General report and this particular story, it was published December 13th in the DCN, and it was written by Don Wall. You can find it online at our website. And on the topic of Minister McNaughton, we also talked to him around new research into millennials that the ministry had done, and how that research is going to help inform their skilled trade recruitment policy. Research conducted for the ministry indicated many young people surveyed did not know where to start looking to gain access to information about the trades. Minister McNaughton said during his keynote address at the Building Show breakfast, said this: "Many are not even aware what constitutes a skilled trade. It is easy to become a doctor, everyone knows what to do. But those surveyed added they didn't know how to become a construction worker." McNaughton highlighted the results of the research conducted by Ipsos, saying it would inform future policy as the ministry and other stakeholders strive to recruit hundreds of thousands of workers to the skilled trades over the next 10 years. As Minister McNaughton said, we can't sit idly by knowing this. "I'm on a mission to get more young people into the skilled trades," Minister McNaughton said. "It is important for Ontario's future. This research is important. It will shape how we get more kids into the skilled trades by understanding their values and what they are looking for in a career." We all know about the labor, for the longest time it was the impending labor shortage that this industry is facing, which is now we're starting to see the early wave of that. So it's encouraging to see the ministry and the province start to look at how to better communicate and connect with that younger generation of worker that this industry needs. We know there are a lot of stakeholders and organizations involved in construction that have started to turn their focus to underrepresented groups such as women, indigenous people. But as also the talk is always about how we connect with the youth and breaking those stigmas related to working in the industry and having a career in construction. So this is just another tool in that toolbox as it concerns Ontario's construction industry in how they engage with the future workforce, and we look forward to seeing what else the province finds in this regard and recommends. Overall, it's been an active time here at the DCN and the JOC as we wrap up our the calendar year 2019. Our reporters are working on year in review stories, basically our newsmaker of the year in construction stories. We'll have those both from the JOC side of things and the DCN side of things. As well here with the construction record, maybe we'll talk about some of our highlights, like top topics we've discussed. As well, here at the podcast, we're working away at some preview episodes around ConExpo Con Ag, and we look forward to sharing those with you over the oncoming weeks. And with that, I'll throw to Warren at the Burnaby office. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Vince. Warren Fry, digital media editor for the Journal of Commerce here. I'm all my lonesome since Russell Hickson is on vacation this week, back next. And I'm just going to cover one story that I did about the throne speech that came out last week. I got the reaction from Western Canadian perspective, and the reaction is generally, those are some nice ideas, and let's hear some specifics. Basically, almost everybody I talked to thought that there should have been more about construction, more about the industry as like a preferred employer, more about addressing the infrastructure problems we have in this country, and there just wasn't much of that in the throne speech. It was more about climate change, which people thought was a good thing, and it does affect construction, but it wasn't specific enough. I talked to the PCA, the BCCA, the BC Building Trades, and the VRCA, and to one extent or another, they were all focused on the construction angle and said that the government was not. Another article we've just put up is from John Bleasby, freelancer, and it's about tomorrow's clean, green job sites are here today. So these are touted as things we're going to have in the future. And a lot of that work on the ground is being done now, according to him. He said a lot of greenhouse gas reduction lies with power sources. So basically what John's talking about is getting rid of generators and trying to replace them with more emission-friendly power sources. And one of the things he talks about is the volt stack power station, which are mobile units that you can use for corded tool applications and for recharging of cordless tool batteries, that kind of thing. He also says cordless tools have further contributed to the reduced call for noisy compressors and exhaust spewing generators. What he points out is that cordless tools aren't only reducing emissions and making things quieter, they're also making things safer, because the cords are a safety hazard, and so, or can be. And so the spread of cordless, much like wireless has been with the technology, is sort of revolutionizing the job site. And you may have noticed that over the last couple of weeks we've been putting out stuff from the Canadian Council for Public-Private Partnerships conference that we went to in late November. We've got another one of those interviews. We've got Don Wall, who speaks to Aaron Corey, the President and CEO of Infrastructure Ontario, about some of the issues that he's been dealing with in his long tenure as the head of that organization, and in sort of looking forward at infrastructure in Canada and Ontario specifically. And that's coming up next.
This feature interview is brought to you by the Ontario Sewer and Water Main Construction Association, Ontario's champion for sustainable and safe water and sewer infrastructure.
I'm with Aaron Corey, as President and CEO of Infrastructure Ontario. I'd like to talk to you about what Infrastructure Ontario is hoping to accomplish at this conference. It's more than just an appearance. No doubt you have annual goals, so talk about, you'll be speaking to the market, people in the marketplace, and addressing priority goals. So could you talk a little about what you hope to accomplish this
Of course,
year?
Don. Thank you. Nice to see you. This conference is a really important opportunity for us. The province in September announced their latest project pipeline. And that, of course, is the invitation, and sometimes they say also the challenge to the market. It's the province laying out the priorities for infrastructure, and the pipeline that was released in September, 32 major P3 projects, $65 billion of value, real split between transit projects, which we talk about all the time in this jurisdiction, and a number of really significant healthcare projects as well. Very aligned to the government's, obviously, priorities around improving transit and transportation in our urban environment, but also ending hallway medicine. So we've got this pipeline. As I say, it's the largest we've ever had. It's at a scale that we haven't yet managed in this market. So what are we trying to accomplish at this year's conference? Really get into a deeper dialogue with the industry about how collectively we're going to deliver on that ambition, because it is really an opportunity, a once-in-a-generation kind of opportunity to make a difference in our urban fabric, in the way our lives are on a day-to-day basis, and of course, in terms of healthcare, make a difference for future generations. So we're really talking to the market about how we're collectively going to meet that challenge is what we're focused on.
Yeah. You recently undertook an exercise of market soundings, lots of consultation with the market, meeting new challenges. Could you talk about how that exercise went and what you've got out of it and how it will inform policy?
Sure. There's two things, Don, just to distinguish. We at our agency are constantly engaging with the market at a project level and also more holistically around our program. At the same time, the Minister of Infrastructure, previous Minister, Minister McNaughton, and then Minister Scott carried on and did a sounding of the industry overall, kind of stepped back. And so let me talk about both of those in turn, if I may. On our side, our soundings have really been, as we move especially into the subway program, talking to the market about how we're going to create the capacity to deliver. Capacity at all levels, trades, labor, project management expertise, financing sources, engineering capabilities, all of the above. So our market sounding has been about how do we stage those projects, set the sequencing of them to deliver on the ambition and timelines we've created, that government has created for those projects. We're trying to get them done fast, but we also have to do them in a way that the market can handle. So that's what we've been really focused on. The government and Minister Scott, I think, has spoken about this and will continue to, really wanted to step back and just look at 50,000 feet. How is the industry functioning? Are we getting infrastructure built in ways that are beneficial to taxpayers and make sense for industry? And I think coming out of that, the big themes that we've heard are around, one, innovation. How do you create more room for the industry to come up with innovative solutions? Two, how do you create the best possible competition. That means that invites in and draws in expertise from around the world and leverages all of the built-up local knowledge that we have and capabilities and expertise in this market. So I think a lot of the minister's thinking has been, how do I make sure that competitive environment is absolutely the openest it can be? Open to really big players and smaller, open to local domestic companies and foreign. How do you create that landscape? So that's some of the areas that I think they've been really focused on in their market sounding.
Okay, there's a session coming up called Should I Stay or Should I Go? So that discusses, we've become aware in the past years some major players are reluctant to participate in the sector right now, pulling back. Insurers are not participating as well as they should. What's how's that? Is that a major concern for IO, and will it affect the number of people participating in competitive bidding? What are any concerns related to some of those step backs?
Our goal as an agency is to drive competitive procurements to get the best value for taxpayers in the service of long-term infrastructure. So when I say the best value for taxpayers, I don't mean the lowest cost, I mean the best value for 30 years, but that is what we're about. And if you look at our track record over the last 15 years, we've had incredible success in rebuilding the infrastructure of this province. We've done 125 projects in the last 15 years, built new hospitals, highways, transit systems, courts, schools. All of that has been through a model that's really been on the balance. It's balancing on an edge, if you will, between effective risk transfer and getting the private sector to play their role in a different way than they did in the past. If you look at what the construction industry looked like a generation ago, if you've ever done a home reno, you might have experienced this. It's an industry with delay and cost creep kind of endemic to it. And so our goal was to change that. And we have changed that narrative. You can't go too far the other way, because when you too far the other way, meaning pushing all the risk to the contractor and forcing them into situations, and you've seen in other parts of the world, not here so much, but in other parts of the world, that's led to bankruptcies. It's led to pretty massive restructuring of companies and even industries. We're trying to stay always one step ahead of that, Don. So our job is to constantly engage the market and figure out what's the risk they can take. How do you get them to take their fair share, deliver on their promises and commitments to us, get protection for taxpayers, but at the same time recognize the limits of that, especially at the scale of subway projects, our GO expansion program that we're working on with Metrolinx, which are projects of just really unprecedented scale.
Yeah.
So it's always finding that balance that we're working on. So you asked about the session, should I stay or should I go? And I think there are companies, some of them from their experience in other parts of the world, that are just reassessing their capacity and their ability to take on risk-based projects, some here in Ontario. And our job is to listen to those and find that balance so that we can keep them in the market, keep competitive procurements, but also continue to work in the benefit of taxpayers.
Yeah. Okay, capital firms of some of the large contractors, they, in conversations I've had recently, they say we're pushing back hard and making sure that the risk that you're asking them to take, as you're just mentioning, is they're not comfortable with the status quo. They want a realignment of that. How is that? How are those discussions going now?
So we're really at the early stages of them, especially when it pertains to the subway program, which was announced earlier this year. And as you know, the province is proceeding in the lead with all the subway extension projects. 4 that we're now working on, the Ontario line and the Scarborough and Yonge North extensions and the Eglinton West as well. And so for those, we're using this week. We have a series of meetings with potential participants, potential bidders on those markets to talk about risk and how do we create a balanced model for those projects. That continues for the next few weeks. We're doing this round of market sounding specifically to the subway program. That's an important part of how we're going to hear those concerns from the market and test solutions. Ultimately, as I said on stage in the conference, I think the first step is around better understanding what are they worried about, because interestingly, some of the worries we have are not the same as theirs. I mean, can I give you an example? One of the biggest things we're concerned about is system integration, about getting something that works when you put all the pieces together. When you're buying a transit system, it's a system. Trains work with signals, they pull into stations. Drivers have to drive those, and all of it coming together and working, that system integration is critical. And in the historical, I call it the traditional construction world of the past, that was done in small chunks. You hired someone to build you each of your stations, sometimes different people, different person you bought the trains from, signaling systems. And then the owner tried to put those the kit of parts together to make it work. That integration we care about a lot. Bidders say to us, well, we don't manufacture the trains, so if they're 6 months late, we don't want to be eating delay for the whole 6 months. And my answer to that is, well, that's interesting, because I care about vehicle delay, of course, but I'm not trying to make you suffer the consequences of your vehicle partner's delay. What I want is you to act as the integrator. So is there a way of us splitting vehicle risk, which is a big risk people are concerned about, into its component parts in a way that we get what we want, system integration, they get what they want, relief from delay? Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of conversation we're having now. It can't just be about, I want less risk, no, I want you to take more risk. It has to be a more nuanced discussion, and that's what we're working towards.
We have 1 minute left, so that probably should be the last one.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more question. Your record, you've got a great record that's every year, we read about it, being on time and on budget in most of your projects. The acceleration of some of these subway projects, including the integration of the Ontario line completely new, will some of those difficult projects which take place longitudinally over a long area, lots of risks associated with that, will those jeopardize your great track record so far? Do you see, will you be able to maintain the high standards that you've had in the past 10 years?
I think our track record gives us the license to dream big and have ambition on it. I think we're proud but never satisfied. Our track record is that using our availability-based P3 model has delivered projects on budget almost entirely. 95% of our projects are on budget. About 2/3 of them are on schedule. So let's start from acknowledging that there's not a magic solution. There's no model that can solve for the types of delays that construction problems sometimes face. Mm-hmm. And I don't presume to. What I can tell you is that our model tries to create maximum incentive for on-time schedule performance and shares the consequences of lateness with the contractors in a way that other models don't. So that's what we really focus on. I think we're excited about the challenge of bringing these transit projects online quickly to the benefits of Ontarians, and that's what we're working towards.
Okay. Thanks a lot for talking to me, and nice to see you.
Thanks. Great to see you.
Okay.
Thanks.